Thank you. Thanks for sticking around for the last one. I'll try and keep it under 2 hours. Just kidding, I got 20 minutes. Hopefully you guys got a drink, hang around with us. If you're over here on Theater 4, you've obviously crossed through the security zone, so hopefully most of you in the audience here have some sort of security role at your organization. If you don't, feel free to take videos, pictures of our slides here, pass them on to your favorite AWS security practitioner at your organization. I think I've got tons of good nuggets in here. But what we're going to cover here is basically how we got to where we're at today with the cloud and with AWS. I'll cover quickly some of the traditional security approaches that we've brought from on-prem to the cloud with us, and some of the challenges that those are giving a lot of organizations. And then I'll leave you with a couple of stats from one of our security reports that we ran last year on what we're seeing just with our platform and people using AWS today. So first of all, how did we get here? So obviously we've came a very long and far way, and we've hit very large jumps and revolutions and cycles from the way we build and deploy our applications at our organizations, all the way over obviously to the IT team and the infrastructure team that supports those applications. AWS in the cloud, as you guys know, revolutionized everything that IT organizations or departments do for their organization. No longer do we need to stand up these big data centers and put together all of these servers and connect all these devices and routers and switches, right? With AWS, in a few seconds, we can stand up a whole entire cloud estate, giving those resources back to the organization to continue building better, bigger, faster applications, right? If we move security into the picture, which unfortunately usually gets the fifth wheel of this dating scene, we really haven't had a revolutionary cycle like the IT team has had. Security has been kind of forced to take a lot of that on-prem traditional security approach with them to the cloud, and it's causing a lot of headaches. First problem it's really is causing a lot of teams is that they're getting a poor sense of security coverage. So because on-prem, if we wanted to buy something for vulnerabilities or we wanted to have something for firewalls, right? You'd buy a service or a tool in the platform, you'd code it all in there, and you just try and assign a team to it, right? That's a little bit different in the cloud. So in the cloud, if you try and take that same approach, you're either going to have overlapping technologies or gaps in technologies, but none of the tools are really talking to each other. The second alternative you could have is you're going to deploy a lot of agents on your machines, right? Those come with a high cost of ownership and can sometimes lead to a lot of performance degradation. The second biggest problem, especially when you talk about layering tools together, is we start generating alert overload. So these security teams are getting desensitized by all of these alerts, right? They don't have all the context they need to go solve the alert. They usually need to research and do more information. And we usually have a bunch of different security tools that are buzzing a bunch of different alarms, and you just don't know where to focus. These two problems lead to security inefficiencies with AWS, right? So we're wasting time on the security team plumbing together tools instead of actually remediating the risk. So in an opportunity to gain visibility, we're spending time not remediating the risk. We're just trying to uncover it. The second thing the security teams are doing is we're wasting time correlating the data that our security tools are giving to us before we go and remediate the risk. Obviously, we can't solve everything. There's more alerts and more alarms buzzing than our teams can handle. So we have to have some sort of prioritization method to go and remove the risks that have the biggest threat to the organization. And what would a good slide be if you didn't quote yourself? But for this one, if security wants to succeed in the cloud, security teams must operate with absolute efficiencies and adopt some form of automation to keep pace with AWS. So at Orca Security, we thought there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a different approach. And we came down to it with four kind of guiding principles, all happen to start with C. The first one is we need to have absolute coverage. Absolute coverage of assets and visibility into our assets in our cloud estate, and risk coverage. The second thing our security teams need is context, right? They need to be able to find and understand what the issue is or what the alarm, what the risk is to the business. The third thing is these security tools in the cloud have to be comprehensive. It's got to be one tool that can kind of consolidate everything holistically. And then the fourth and final one is being consumable. So we got to be able to take the security data that we find and get it into the right teams at the right times and the right workflows and the right tools so they can go and solve and operate on it. So how do we achieve this, right? Orca patented the side scanning approach, which involves us connecting to your AWS cloud or multi-cloud environments through two primary sources. We're connecting to your cloud metadata, and we're also connecting into your runtime block storage. With those two sources, we are able to discover cloud assets, some that you probably didn't even know you had, that got spun up. We're able to also identify the roles of those assets. We can identify the connectivity between all of those assets, and then we can also uncover all of the risks associated with those assets. Giving your security teams a contextual graph and automatically correlating and prioritizing the risks that matter the most. So if I'm looking at this graph and I had two CVEs running in both my EC2 instances, I can see where one's actually internet facing and exposed to the internet and can lead to some PII. I have probably sitting in an S3 bucket over here. That vulnerability may be classified as a CVSS score of both being 6 or 8 or whatever it is. However, the one that is internet facing is posing a bigger threat in my environment, giving my security teams the context and the prioritization they need to solve that one before getting to the next. So what Orca is really doing is we're flipping it and giving the advantage back to security teams. So hackers think in ways of graphs. How do I gain access? How do I move throughout the environment? How do I get to a sensitive area where I can pose the most damage, right? It's all in for financial rewards. Can I steal the data? Can I sell the information? Can I bring them down? Can I hold them for ransom? So security teams need to flip and do the same thing and defend themselves by way of graphs, not from siloed lists of multiple tools just buzzing a bunch of alarms. And how we prioritize and correlate that is one, obviously, with the severity, but what is the exposure of this risk? And then what is the potential business impact if this risk or these toxic combinations of risks get infiltrated? So aside from the approach of going in and getting all of the data we need from assets and security and risk, we're able to kind of unify that into a data model. And the more things you throw into the cloud, the more things Orca is going to be able to see. So the more telemetry, the more context we can ultimately generate and give back to the team. So we're looking at all different kinds of risks: vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, data exposure, authentication and entitlements, so IAM, threats, malware, API, lateral movement risks, and more. With that, your team gets better security outcomes, right? I have a continuous, updated daily asset inventory of my entire cloud estate. I've got prioritized alerts that are coming in. I know which ones are most important and I understand why and how to go fix them. I've got continuous cloud compliance. I'm getting cloud detection and response, especially if you turn on a tool like GuardDuty or CloudTrail. It can get inherited into Orca as well. And then I've got remediation steps and orchestration and integration, so I can send them to my SIM SOAR tools, my ticketing systems, and have people go solve the risk. So this is kind of just a little snapshot example of what kind of gets the byproduct or the secret sauce out of having a tool like Orca, is that if we can understand all of the assets and all the connectivity and all the risks that are associated with those assets, we can now formulate basically active pen tests continuously. So we can see if you were going to be infiltrated, this is how they would get it. It's going to start with initial access from service vulnerability running on my EC2 instance that also has sensitive keys lurking on that system that gives me administrative access to an S3 bucket, which Orca has already identified and scanned and saw that you have email addresses in there. So where you have PII, credit cards, healthcare information, whatever it might be, Orca can see what's in there, automatically mark that as a crown jewel, saying this is where our adversaries are going to try and get to, and now go backwards on the blast radius and find out how do we cut or sever the attack chain. Overall, giving you a high business impact score, right? And now we're starting to see where our cloud estates are being infiltrated by toxic combinations of risks, not just necessarily one vulnerability that we did not fix. So this is kind of what we're seeing today. We have a State of Public Cloud Security report we ran back in 2022. There's a URL down there at the bottom. You can go down there and download it for free. It's got tons of good information. I'm only going to share about 4 pieces I can pull out of this report for you. What we find is that 36% of organizations are leaving their data unencrypted, right? 78% of these attack paths that our platform analyzes starts with vulnerabilities. The third thing is that we are overly permissive in our roles, in our rules. So 42% of organizations grant permissions, admin permissions, to more than 50% of the organization's users. So 36% of these organizations are prone to this lateral movement threat. Once they get in, they have full range of where to go. And then the last thing, on average, the attack paths that we see only requires 3 steps to get to a high impact business area. Typically, entrance through a vulnerability, some sort of lateral movement, AWS hygiene we just didn't take care of, that gives us access to unencrypted data. And while we're seeing these stats, it's easy to understand why these are happening, right? This isn't the traditional shared responsibility model you see from AWS anymore. Depending on how you guys build your AWS infrastructure and the tools and services you use from AWS, kind of distinguishes what types of responsibility you are responsible for and what's just more customizable that you don't have to worry about. So security teams need to be experts in knowing this type of information if you're not using a platform like Orca. The second thing here too is that we've been taught to kind of guard and protect ourselves from these kind of siloed pillars, right? So 5 critical domains I have to get security right. I usually put a team in charge of infrastructure. I've got another team looking at vulnerabilities on where my applications live. I've got another team or tool that I'm using for identities, pipeline, data, DSPM, et cetera, right? And that is leading to siloed data charts, which ultimately lets my team work from siloed lists and they're not correlated. So I could be missing things. So before Orca Security, typically what you would have seen, this would have been a really nice, high budgeted security product, but you probably would have bought a product for CSPM, which is your misconfigurations, your cloud workload protections that's going to look under your vulnerabilities and protect your applications, your cloud detection response tool that's going to take care of all of your threat detection and monitoring. If you use Kubernetes in the cloud, data security monitoring, API security, KIM, shift left, right? We'd have a tool for each one of these things. Thanks to what we kind of classified as the CNAPP, it's a cloud native application protection platform, you can have all these things within one comprehensive tool. And you can also get integrations to your ticketing and alerting systems, so into your workflows, or your asset management, or your compliance tools, right, your SOAR tools. So I'd be remiss here if I did not mention how well we partner with AWS. We've got protection for over 100 different AWS services, including many of the security tools and services they offer today. One of those ones that I would highlight would be guard duty. I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier. But if you guys are naturally having guard duty turned on in your AWS estate, Orca can ingest all of that guard duty threat intel and add another layer of context and telemetry to it, to where you might say, I have 5,000 brute force attempts going throughout my environment, but which one of those actually lead to an exposed instance that has lateral movement risk? You wouldn't know that if you didn't have a CNAPP solution like Orca. So Orca's been around now for, let's see here, 4 or 5 years. I think I've been here for 3 of them. We've got hundreds of customers throughout the globe in many different verticals: retail, healthcare, finance. We've won multiple different awards, which kind of validates the platform and the technology and the approach that we're taking to bring security to AWS. And obviously, last year, one of our most important awards that we won was the AWS Partner Global Security Partner of the Year from them, which we were very proud of, and we want to continue that partnership with AWS. That's all I have for you guys. You can reach me on LinkedIn, even send me some spam if you want to, or I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.